and interrupted more than a dozen of those attacks by shutting terrorist cells down around the world. They've always been worried since the first attack on the World Trade Center that there would be another bold strike on U.S. soil.
And, of course, there are any number of targets which have been high on counterintelligence's list in New York City: the Lincoln Tunnel, the United Nations, the Holland Tunnel, the FBI headquarters, not to mention all of the city civic buildings which John mentions. President Bush is, by the way, going to speak very shortly to the nation about this, and then he's going to return to Washington. And we have on the phone our principal aviation analyst and expert, John Nance. Good morning, John.
Morning, Peter.
What would you like to contribute to this? Because one knows that it is indeed possible to fly an aircraft into a building if one intends to do so.
If one intends to do so, that's correct. And unfortunately, when you've got something that has been as worrisome a target as the World Trade Center, regardless of the way we've hardened it up on the ground, they have apparently, whoever they is, picked the one vulnerable area. The thing that is most disturbing to me is not only the fact, of course, that there are people more than likely in that building that have been directly affected by this, but that we may have an innocent load of passengers. The flash of that second aircraft across the screen is disturbingly close to what you would call the planform of an Airbus A319 or an Airbus 320, also of a 767 or something of that nature. And that's a large airplane.
John, let me go slowly with you, and we'll actually put it on the screen again very slowly so that we can see it come across screen. Are you able to identify specifically the type of aircraft by looking at this videotape as it comes across? Can we roll that, please?
I'm watching that right as it comes across the screen, and it is more than likely not a Boeing 737. That profile, Peter, is very close to an Airbus A320, A319.
And who flies the Airbus 320, 318?
We have quite a few airlines.
Okay, so
very few private ones.
All right, and John comports a little bit here with at least these initial reports that the FBI is investigating reports of a hijacking just before the second crash occurred. We had no... John, let me just ask you one other technical question about just flying in the World Trade Centers. When the first incident occurred, it was reasonable for people to suspect that that was an accident. Yes. From a flying point of view, is the World Trade Center always something to worry about if you're taking off from one of New York City's airports?
Not really. And the fact that we have had all these years since that B-25 crashed into the Empire State Building tells you a lot about the flight paths around New York City. You have to be so disastrously out of contact and off course, and so many things would have to go wrong to imperil any of the buildings in Manhattan. The fact that it hasn't happened tells us really how rare a situation it would have to be.
John, the FAA immediately asked for New York City airports to suspend operations. We can confirm that Newark and LaGuardia have closed down.
And Kennedy and Teterboro and Westchester. Yes. They've essentially asked all airports within a 20-mile radius to put a hold on anything taken off.
Teterboro Airport, which is in New Jersey, just on the west side of the Hudson River, and Westchester, which is maybe 40, 50 miles north of New York City. They're all suspended operations. Standard, easy to do, John, quick to do, it seems to have been so.
Fortunately, very, very quick to do because they're all controlled by air traffic control towers, and they can put a halt to the operations with one phone call.
Okay, John Nance, thanks very much. Call us back, will you, if you learn anything.
Peter, one of the difficulties they're going to face, as you can glean from this picture here, is the people who are trapped and need to be rescued are on the upper floors, but you see the plume of smoke covers the roof. The last explosion was at the bottom of the building and the smoke rose up, but they were able to make a series of daring rescues by landing, and they've trained for this and retrained, landing police helicopters on the roofs of the Twin Towers and pulling people out. It's going to be very difficult, since the roofs are now enveloped in smoke, for the police helicopters, which are arriving at a landing zone now just below the World Trade Center, to be able to get up there till that smoke dissipates. And that's where they had expected to pull a lot of people out this time because they had so much success the last time.
Similarly, John, if you look at the two buildings, it does appear that at least in the northern tower there, or the left tower as you see it on the screen, below the incident, the building at least looks on the outside to be reasonably secure, and people will have a long, horrendous, terrifying walk down in a darkened building but we'll at least be able to get out on the ground. By the way, Claire Shipman, ABC's Claire Shipman just called in. She's been checking with the FBI. She also says that the FBI had no warning whatsoever. Their crisis management operation in Washington is in place in conjunction with the Federal Aviation Administration. They are all now, which makes perfect sense, focusing on the recovery of survivors. The New York Stock Exchange has delayed indefinitely its opening today. This will just have not only an extraordinary effect on the national psyche, one surmises, dissimilar perhaps, but from what happened in Oklahoma City, but a very clear reminder to those of us in the United States that terrorism of a huge magnitude, with which we're somewhat more accustomed in the Middle East and in Africa, given the attacks on the U.S. embassies a couple of summers ago. But a reminder again that as far as international terrorism is concerned, and people's anger and even desperation on this occasion with the United States is going to find itself manifest here on U.S. soil. John, here's the president now in Florida. I wonder if everybody knows there what's going on. We'll listen to him.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I unfortunately will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Rod Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at the Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
President clearly shaken, I think one can say, confirming what we think we all knew, which was that 2 aircraft in an act of terrorism crashed into the twin trade towers. Nobody was quite certain about the first one at the very outset, but the President absolutely, having talked to the Vice President, the Governor of New York, the Director of the FBI, now believing and confirming that we have 2 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, and the President saying the 2 things which a President must say at a moment like this: terrorism will not stand, which is an important thing for him to say, but not always necessarily effective, and God bless the victims and their families. John Miller, what are you picking up on the police radio?
There was a bit of a stir a moment ago because LaGuardia Tower reported urgently that there was another aircraft moving fast in the no-fly zone. Now they've contacted that aircraft and they say it's a military aircraft that's rushed to the scene to enforce the no-fly zone and literally be a presence in the area in case there is another plane headed for the building, so that there'll be some at least armed aircraft up to confront it.
Just think for a second, John, how you have drawn an extraordinary parallel. We think of no-fly zones as being in southern and northern Iraq, where the Iraqis are not allowed to fly, and if they do fly, are going to be shot down. Now we have a no-fly zone all around the lower part of New York City, and perhaps on the northern area too. All of the areas, airports closed down, and armed American aircraft in the air to shoot down anybody else who wants to take a shot at the place.
I mean, those are the reports that are coming across the radio now, and if they're true, it's quite incredible and certainly unprecedented.
Well, it would also suggest, as best you can tell, looking at it from this very sort of antiseptic environment that we are all in our newsrooms, is that the reaction has been fairly quick. New York City has an Office of Emergency Management. It's over here on the west side. It's a great bunker, which the city...
Ironically, it's located in the World Trade Center complex, although not in the Twin Towers.
Just
right
north,
next door.
North of the Trade Towers,
right.
in the World Trade Center, in the other northern World Trade Center there. And on an occasion like this is not one they absolutely anticipate when they get going. They're talking very concerned with chemical and biological warfare. They've got extensive plans about that, which they very often demonstrate to the press.